let me set the context here for everybody to understand this topic correctly. So there are two parts of this topic. If you notice, the first one is business analysis ecosystem. For the last 3 years, we've been talking about this particular topic consistently. I just hope that everybody understands it correctly. The idea of ecosystem is to really bring every stakeholder involved in the corporate, in the world, who's involved in business analysis in some form, together. So whether it is a corporate, people like you, academia, the policymakers like NASSCOM, all the other policymakers across the globe, research firms, so Forrester, Gartner, McKinsey's of the world, or even some of the academic infrastructure that we have, which means we have 11 IIBA academic partners here, but there are so many others who are either interested or have been following IIBA for a long time. How do we bring all of them together with an objective to influence better business outcome? How do we as business analysts adopt all of these, or collaborate with these stakeholders and be effective in our day-to-day job that we are performing as business analysts? You all know, we all talk about disruptions, technology disruptions that are taking place almost on a daily, monthly basis. So can we be up to the curve? Can we be equipped with all the skills, tools, and techniques that we really need to be effective as business analysts? So that's first part of the title. The second is the change agent for the growth. So my belief is that if we have right business analysis, business architecture, vibrant community who is forward-looking and ahead of the curve, that will help every stakeholder grow. What that means is, as a system integrator, if you are part of the system integrators, and if you do your job better than what you're doing today, you will grow, your company will grow. If you guys grow and you're collaborating with IIBA and giving all the inputs to IIBA for it to grow, if IIBA grows and come up with better collateral, it adds value back to you, and then we probably influence better business outcomes. So the idea is, how do we bring these stakeholders together and then and act as change agent for the growth? Anything that you would like to cover in this panel? Let me have a quick checkpoint. All right, excellent, thank you. So we have a great panel here. Somehow Vardha came in. He had a meeting, but unfortunately he was quite unwell, somehow sustained for an hour, but then he couldn't sustain any further. He had to go back. We've got ALAIN, KATHLEEN, ANMOL, and DAYAPATRA from Accenture. They all come with different backgrounds. And if you notice, this panel discussion or panel members were handpicked for this conversation. So ALAIN, as you know, handles the global business development corporate connect for IIBA. KATHLEEN handles global chapters and membership for IIBA. DAYAPATRA is focused vertical for Accenture. And ANMOL has tremendous experience in digital, some of the ecosystem that he's worked upon, products and things like that. So over to you. I just want to start maybe with ALAIN. Yeah. ALAIN, what do you think we should be doing when it comes to ecosystem and how IIBA is contributing to that space?
Can you hear me properly?
A little bit.
A little bit harder? Yeah. Well, when I think about ecosystem, I think about diversity. The diversity of stakeholders that we need to engage. And in IIBA, one of the key thing that we want to do is to collaboration, engagement with a variety of stakeholders in the industry. And you talk about policymakers, training organizations, governments, other professional associations, vendors, tool vendors, and obviously organization that employs BAs. That creates a really rich background to which we can engage, and the outcome of this is creating value. Value for our members, value for the corporations that employs them, the the industry. So this is really our goal at IIBA is to engage those diverse stakeholders, identifies opportunities for collaboration and engagement, and create value that we want to provide back to our community.
Excellent, thank you. And do you see some examples of similar nature across the globe where some of the other, IIBA in other countries or even in North America, you see some of these engagements happening there too?
Well, I'm looking at a position where I engage on a daily basis with a variety of organizations. Late last year, in November of 2014, we launched a new strategic plan, and one of the sort of pivotal aspect of this plan is to engage with the community. And once we announced that, it was amazing the response that we got from multiple organizations that came in without even knocking at their door. They came and talked to us and said, we want to collaborate with you. So there are examples across a variety of our organizations, from training organizations to governments to tool vendors that wants to engage with us so that we can create the value, rich value that we provide back to our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to you.
All right.
Kathleen, you have an interesting role at IIBA. 113 countries and, oh my God.
115 chapters.
115 chapters, wow. So what's been your experience? I know even your previous background is to manage a lot of these chapters for another very large nonprofit and now with IIBA. What do you see? What's happening across the globe? And I think we've discussed a lot of the stuff as far as India chapters is concerned. But we'd like to see from a contribution point of view, how you think IIBA is contributing from a chapter's membership point of view towards this ecosystem.
Perfect. Well, I think it's a very exciting time for us at IIBA from a chapter perspective. This morning during the welcome, we heard about meeting face-to-face and how that is additional value that you can't find from a book, you can't find online, you don't see in your office. So as we bring our members together at the chapter level, it's that opportunity to share the best practices, to network, to share what's working in your organization with other people in their organizations. It's a great opportunity to build and to collaborate. So we also learned this morning that one size does not fit all.
Yes.
And what happens here in India may be very different that happens over in Britain or in Canada. So we're looking at those opportunities and exploring different opportunities where we can bring greater value. And one of the most exciting things that we're going to be able to have the opportunity is to look and launch here in India the new flexible chapter model, yes, which will be a self-sustaining model. And that should be able to bring our resources closer to home on the ground with wonderful expertise like yourselves to really flourish that at the local level. So that's something that we're hoping to do here in India. There's been a lot of requests from other parts of the world, which is very exciting, but I think it's exciting to be able to research it here and to launch it. Excellent. And then to be able to take that around the world with us. So
thank you very much for choosing India for your pilot. Yep. Thank you. Let's shift our focus to Dayapatra. So, so you handle a very large vertical in Accenture, and I think you've seen some of the disruptive technology disruptions that are taking place. And I think there's a tectonic shift, in my views, across the industry. There is a tectonic shift in the definition of a BA, the way technologies are evolving, the customer demands are changing, and hence, despite keeping the knowledge areas and tasks of the BABOK similar, I think the context in which these are applied are changing too fast. So what's your perspective? What do you think? What is happening in Accenture, and from an ecosystem point of view, what are your thoughts?
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me on the panel. So you're absolutely right. I think if I were to take my industry vertical as an example, right? So we have comms, media, entertainment, and technology, three different industry verticals that we provide services to in my industry group. While these are three different industries, the boundaries between these three are converging very, very fast. To put things in perspective, the pace at which industry is changing and the consumer behavior that is changing is tremendous. New business models are emerging. So if you take, for example, say music distribution, till some time back, Walmart was the largest music distribution channel in the world. Today, it's Apple, right? They've changed the business model completely by bringing the device and application together. And that has changed the way people think. Netflix is another great example. You need to look at the way consumer behavior is changing. The average age of consumer today is rapidly coming down. And today's consumer is extremely impatient. She wants instant service. And so that is changing the way industry is delivering, whether it's a product or service. A lot of things are changing from product to service today. Look at the delivery models, the way we are delivering to our end customers. While waterfall still continues to be the model for majority of the work, but still Agile has been around now for some time. DevOps, continuous delivery, is the new thing, and no business community wants to wait for years altogether for a business transformation to take place. So they want something rapidly, every few months, or maybe sometimes every few weeks. So in that kind of context, if you look at BA's role, that also has been changing. Yes. Traditionally, the way we used to look at BAs in software services companies is they would do requirement documentation. Probably they will support some technical folks during build and maybe design, and they will probably be involved in some amount of testing. But the way it has been changing over last, more in recent past, is that we are looking at BAs to be more strategic in nature, partner to the customer, the business, understand the business in depth, and bring in that expertise and sort of be that trusted advisor to the business community, and sort of play a change agent role, and sort of build that industry depth that we require from them now.
So from an Accenture point of view, how do you think you're contributing to some of the ecosystem development, either locally within Accenture or for some of your clients or otherwise?
So basically, I think traditionally, like I said, BA work has been done primarily by IT guys who have some industry knowledge, some business knowledge, and of course analytical skills. But like I said, with the change in the industry and the way things are moving, we require BAs to have a lot more business domain knowledge. So the way we have been looking at it is last 1 year we have developed a new model, what we call 3-tier model of capability building for BAs, wherein we have sort of looked at different level of competencies needed at different tiers. How do we partner with the industry and bring in some of the SMEs from the industry who could be the end users within the industry, who would be sort of industry gurus for us? How do we look at product companies and sort of look at people who understand both IT and business process? And how do we work with academia to look at people who have done their post-graduation or graduation in a relevant discipline? To take an example, say for oil and gas industry, it could be say IIBHU, if I were to take an example, where people do geoscience and geophysics masters. Yeah. So how I can work with BHU and sort of help them tweak the course content in such a way that I can hire those people into an IT company like Accenture, and then sort of train them on IT methodologies and languages, and so that they understand basics of the industry and they also understand IT.
So excellent example, which means you're directly collaborating with academics, academic institutions to really come up with the right curriculum.
Absolutely. A lot more needs to be done. I think just the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. This is just tip of the iceberg again. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Anmol, again, you come with tremendous background in terms of driving digital transformations, some of the products, the whole ecosystem from an IBM point of view. What do you think? So you have, right? Rational Suite, for that matter, is one of the most common product, for that matter, for BAs. Especially, of course, it is pricey, by the way. Let me tell you this. It's a little expensive, but
come at some price, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there is, so what's your thought?
Sure. So first thing, I would like to start with where we are today. And when I look at myself, when I started my career, there was no better time in terms of the excitement of what's happening around you as a professional and what's happening in the industry. So this is the time which is so exciting for professionals, and especially for BA professionals, to be in here. And why I'm saying that is when we are looking at how the world is changing, there are two dimensions. One dimension is in terms of how businesses are getting disrupted. Since morning, you have been hearing about various disruptors. And all these disruptors are around how data, how engagement, social, mobile, and how cloud is really bringing a very different fundamental change in the way businesses are being operated. And the future of business is very different from the way we see today. And future of business is all composable. And what that means is there is no more the point of making a thing and just focusing on a thing, but really thinking about how businesses can bring various things together, create value, and really deliver outcome to what they want to do on the business. And when I see who is in a position to really help business envision this, help business create that strategic view, and bring various aspects of these components of making services, creating a vision around what needs to be built, and this is the community which will be creating it. And I believe that as we see the future emerging for this profession, will be strategic partnership with business, envisioning what businesses need to be delivered in a very different life cycle, in a very different manner than what we have seen before. And that's why that is so promising around it. The second dimension is about, it's not just how businesses are changing, but it's about how new ways of working is emerging. So each one of us are really working differently. What we used to do 2 years before, 3 years before, and how we work today is very different. And various dimensions of it is how we collaborate with each other, how we work in the community, how we work with various tools and technology, which is far more intelligent than what we have seen before. And a lot of my focus goes in really building how we really create technology components, products which will make the job of various professionals easier. As Ashish, you talked about rational portfolio of products which manages the life cycle for it. But there are various other components and technology and things which we are building upon. And to give you a few examples in the space of how we are making technology which will make it easier for various professionals like you to have tools, those are far more intelligent, will do machine learning by themselves, and you will be able to really focus on what you need to focus on. So lot of new age work in terms of cognitive computing, where you can interact with your computer in the natural language, not by programmers, so it's not a domain of just technical programmers. Second, in how we can create basic platforms like even your email and collaboration platform. We just released IBM Verse, which is a platform which learns from your habits, which really figures it out once in the morning you get up and tells you what is the most important, whether your boss has sent you an email today morning or not. You don't have to scan through everything. But how it will learn with you and really create a powerful partnership of having a tool along with what you as an individual in the profession wants to do. And you mentioned about rational portfolio. A lot of you must be using DOORS Next Generation, really a composable platform, bringing all the requirement pieces together. We just put it on cloud. And various technologies which will just make the job easier, not just for the technology developers, but also for business analysts in terms of making prototyping faster. We just released IBM Bluemix, which is our PaaS platform, various services, possible to do in 1 hour what you were trying to do in many, many days. And when I look at intersection of all this, intersection of how businesses are becoming composable and how new ways of working are coming together, this intersection is creating opportunity for this community to really look at future and think how they can change themselves, how they can become the next catalyst of change in business and really make a next level of difference.
Thank you. So I have few good terms here. I just want to bring out some specific focus on policy development. In my views, I think we've all been in existence for ages. One thing that would glue all of us together is the policies at large, at the national and international level, with a lot of the policy development organizations, who are in charge of this. So, for example, in case of India, it's NASSCOM, Ministry of Skill Development, Entrepreneurship, or National Skill Development Corporations, and things like that. So, what do you think? Of course, we don't have a representation for them here. We're meeting them, some of them, next week. But then, what do you think? From a policy development point of view, what should be the initiative? Anyone who wants to contribute. This is an open question to any of the panelists. So from a policy development point of view, do you see any specific initiative that we should have, at least from an Indian context, and that will help us build this ecosystem better?
I mean, I can say a few things. So clearly, when we look at context of India, and I was in a conference last week when we had Amitabh Kant, who is the Secretary for Infrastructure and Investments, and the way Amitabh put it, and I will just try to paraphrase, which I will not be able to do with his level of energy, and his point was, India is at a point of inflection of growth. If you really look at what country is trying to do in terms of putting a Digital India platform, which will bring infrastructure at a very, very deep level, what we are trying to do at a country level from Make in India, what we are trying to look at from skills and ecosystem, skill ecosystem at a very broad level across the country, and all the regulatory pieces which needs to spur investment, the growth in India is going to be a very step level different. India will be the fastest growing economy and country in the world, and that creates a very different level of how businesses will come up, how new entrepreneur culture, which we all see around us, is going to build on, and that will require far deeper needs of creating skilled professionals in every space. And I think it's a great opportunity for every community, and as I see other communities get engaged, every community to really participate in this initiative, really look at the vision of what country is going to do, and see how we can help create next level of professionals in the country, which will really help to grow what country is visionizing and what country is building on.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I think in democracies, in countries of democracy, I think governments have a role to play, a social responsibility to spend money that they collect from the citizens. As such, one of the perspectives that for us, association, to engage with government is enabling standards to be in place. When you have standards, then everybody speaks the same language, and it becomes easier for governments to engage with organizations that want to bid on some contracts, for example. Right? So one of the thing that we see happening in several organizations, several governments across the world, there's an example in the United States that Stephen was mentioning this morning, in Italy. There's also some movement taking place in Canada and the UK, is that concept of legislated standards around business analysis, so that, and I think it's a similar thing that's happening also in India with NASSCOM, I think, is to create those standards that makes it easier for people to understand how BA do their work and engage the organizations accordingly.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I think from policy point of view, a couple of things. And by the way, I'm not. These are my personal views, not necessarily of Accenture. So, I think one is that the amount of money that the government spends, I think, pretty dismal on education. So I think one is, as a policy framework, we need to look at the money that we spend on education. And second is, government needs to create a policy framework to allow private enterprises to work with industry in developing course curriculum that will help us create creativity, because we don't encourage that too much in our education system. And second is bringing the industry flavor to the education. Today, when students come out of the graduation or postgraduate programs, maybe they understand technical concepts well, maybe they understand the fundamentals well, but not necessarily how it operates in industry. So I think we need a lot more partnership there, and there have to be incentives given in the policy framework for corporates to work with academia, and they to come together and maybe get some funding from the government rather than government directly spending on educational institutions, and sort of which leads to research programs, which leads to course tweaking of the courses to bring in more industry flavor.
Touch upon last point before we open up for Q&A. And that is it. That is about what is in it for everybody sitting on these chairs when it comes to the ecosystem. How are they going to get benefited? So anything that you want to talk about?
So, I mean, if I'm looking at, as I talked about the new way of working, every profession is really looking at how that profession will be able to utilize upon practices, expertise from the community piece. Taking a parallel example, if you look at technology, open source movement, open standards movement has really taken the world at a very different level. And not because that needs to be isolated into one company and closed in it, but the whole movement, the philosophy of the movement is how openness around what we are building as a community of technologists and able to create, whether it's in the form of code, it's form of standards, and what it does to the overall community is a very different level of professional outreach creates for individuals those are associated with it. Look at the kind of revolution it has created for the technical open community point of view. When I draw a parallel for business analysis community, it comes out to me the same, which is how the community can really bring out insights which will help create composable businesses, practices which will create the future of businesses, how they will be able to create values of what businesses are looking for from the community, individuals, practices, and areas. And as community comes together, they will do things which we can't even envision today. And that's what is happening if you look at API economy, how people are just opening up their doors of their businesses, and community comes together and does things which is totally unvisionized, unbelievable. And that's what power of community is. So a lot of times we will continue to think what is in it for me, but what is in it for us, because as collective community brought in, each one of us grow, each one of us really become a little bit different, a little bit better than what we were before. And I see that there are various platforms which you're already creating from IIBA, a lot of community content which you created. IBM used it in many forums, in many of the countries. And that is a classic example of how community comes together, create practices, create contents, and really distribute it back to enterprises, and which really helps the whole cycle to really move from growth to growth.
Yeah, I think you made some very good points. I do feel the kind of disruption, technology disruptions that are taking place, the innovation, focus on innovation today, it's humongous. And that probably is the right time for all the ecosystem to be effective, for the individual to grow in terms of the capabilities, in terms of the skill set. So if I look at from an IIBA point of view, I think Babok 3 is a fantastic example of a contribution from an IIBA point of view to the ecosystem. Because I think, I remember 10 years back when IIBA was half a page website, and we had version 1.6, which was not even complete. And when I read it, I said, oh, thank God, there is some common definition that's evolving as B. And now Babok 3 is just transformed, and the kind of common language that it has created, that's a fairly significant contribution.
Yeah, and I would add, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been in the business for 20 years in business analysis, and I remember being a BA without knowing that I was a BA, because there was no definition of what a BA was. Yeah. So talking about contribution to ecosystem, that's one thing, is a clarity around the role. Although I do admit sometimes it's difficult to explain in different organizations what a BA does, but I think there's a greater clarity today than there was then. Yeah. The standards is another great example of that. And we're at IIBA working even further, where we've defined the standards for a practitioner from the Babok perspective. Our next initiative, and Stephen talked about that this morning, the Enterprise Business Analysis Core Competency Assessment Framework, is defining standards as an enterprise level. How an effective organization that employs that engage with the business analysis should be. And that will define the sort of framework of how organization can effectively use business analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Let's open the floor for the questions. So we already have a few hands right here.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for that insightful session. This question is basically for IIBA. ALAIN, probably you can take it up. What I really want to know is what are the macroeconomic parameters that you would look at for a country before opening a new chapter, for example? So where I'm getting at is, for example, US is trying to cut out the interest rate that will directly translate into the budget cuts for IT. I would imagine some kind of that association they would make. That is the first question. The second question is, this is the second time in the entire day we have heard about flexible chapter model. Now, if you can expand on that a little bit and how the things would be different from what it is happening currently.
That's for you.
Yep. I'll take the flexible chapter model piece. As we talked about earlier, that the one size does not fit all, and we really want to look at how we can add greater value to our members and grow our chapter resources. So one of those things that we want to look at is location. We want to be able to bring IIBA to you as opposed to you having to come to IIBA. So we're looking and exploring different options for that. In the past, we've had, specific guidelines around what are the qualifiers to start a chapter. So we want to be able to provide some more flexibility in that, it might be a smaller chapter over in this part of India, but a very strong and vibrant chapter with a few members. But then in another area of the country, we may have a larger opportunity, so it's a different dynamic over in that area. So we want to be able to bring some flexibility to it. We also want to look at a newer model that is a self-sustaining model, so that it would involve perhaps sort of a regional office here in India. And I'll just use ASHISH as my example. ASHISH would be perhaps a paid member from a sponsored organization, so it's a self-sustaining regional office that will support the membership here locally in India. So we're just in those early stages, but that's the type of thing that we're looking at as to how we can bring greater value to you as an IIBA member and have that opportunity to share experiences here at the local level. Does that help to answer your question?
There was first part of his question as well. Can you repeat that?
I thought it was for a chapter.
I just wanted to know what the macroeconomic parameters that probably that you would look at before going into a country as basically like a qualifier of IIBA or something like that. Or what are so in your dashboard when you look at various parameters, what are the 2 or 3 different parameters that you would look at primarily in order to get to a conclusion that probably this country is doing good or this country needs more improvement?
Are you talking from a chapter perspective or just from IIBA in general to?
So I'm talking about IIBA in general.
Well, I think there's different things. We look at, one of the things is the emerging markets. So there's obviously the world is changing, and there are organizations, corporations that are putting their companies headquarters in different parts of the world, and they employ business analysts. So one of the things we're looking at is that level of engagement there to see if there's opportunity for us to be present in that part of the world. It's still in early infancies of how we do that. We don't necessarily have a strategy to say we're going to go to China tomorrow, we're going to go to the part of the world. It's really based on sometimes stakeholders coming to talk to us, BAs themselves, organizations say, we're here, we'd like to engage with you. And so the model is still evolving from that perspective.
Thank you.
Right here. Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Joel, I'm from Entity Data. Thank you all for a very informative panel discussion. I just have one question. We've spoken a lot about disruptive technologies and massive shifts that are occurring across domains and across the industry. So according to you, this is an open discussion to any of you, what sort of a skill set do you think that a business analyst of the future should possess?
Okay. No, I've spoken now.
So, like I said earlier on, the way software programs or the business transformation programs that we're delivering, the kind of skills that we require are also changing. So today's environment, we require business analysts not to have just the analytical skills, but also understand the underlying business domain. So basically, we require BAs, one, to sort of remain in the same industry vertical for fairly long time so that they understand the industry. They need to have good knowledge of what trends are emerging in the industry, because we want, and we see BAs playing a lot more advisory role to the customers now than, say, in past. We want these business analysts to sort of have good grip on the change management, because BAs, again, are the ones who probably are the glue between different business functions, different user communities who are impacted by a business transformation program. So also they need to act as a change agent in any program. And they need to play, like I said earlier, much more strategic role. So one thing that I would say that BAs need to definitely focus on is the underlying business domain knowledge. That's absolutely critical.
So I'd like to add to this. I think, again, I'll come back to technology disruptions or some of the trends that are emerging, not just in India, it's world over. Things like digital, you saw Microsoft talking about it. I think we all are connected with at least 10 different channels using our mobile devices, if not more. So imagine the network of devices and the information that we've created. So if I look at that, and also some of the key drivers of our corporations, focus on automation, focus on doing a lot of the stuff quicker and more efficiently, I think there is a tectonic shift, again, from a skill standpoint in the BAs that are required. The common element remains the same. So analytical thinking, communication skills, and even to me, domain also, those are integral part of the process. But what I think would need also in near future is design thinking. Is about visualizing, the change that our customers and customers are looking for, and that's going to be much tougher. Historically, we've been the guys who've gone onto the ground. We've got some little domain knowledge. We've got some experience in managing our clients. We've got some experience in developing our solutions. And with that context, when you enter the C-level room and talk about requirements, I think to me that's a very myopic and short view. To me, it has to start from a vision, and that's where we need to step in. We need to be more strategic partners with our clients and our clients' clients. And that means we need to be able to visualize their business problem much more effectively. Just to give you a small rudimentary example, we all have insurances, right? We all file claims. How tedious is the process to file a claim today? Have you experienced it? It's a nightmare, am I correct? What if the agents, suppose, unfortunately, I met with an accident, my car is on the road, and this guy comes in, he clicks photographs, the car gets dragged manually somehow to the workshop, and then all the information flow is all manual. What if that is automated? What if in 3 clicks, the claim is filed? And that requires a very distinctive level of thinking. You need to design processes very differently. You need to design solutions. So imagine the mobile app that you would have probably that you're going to use for that process needs to just have 3 clicks and you're done with the process. So it requires that level of maturity and thinking in terms of the problems that you're going to solve. So I think that, to me, also is fundamental to the shift in the skill that is taking.
Yeah, if I can add, I have a very simple model that I use in my head that I use to manage BAs as well, and I call it the BA quadrant. So if you split that in 4, first quadrant is what I call the technical skills that the BA must have. How to elicit, how to document requirements, all the basic stuff. That's still important. Hey, it won't go away, right? Then there's the interpersonal skills, communications, negotiations, facilitations. They're still there, but there's an amplification of some skills depending on the domain or the techniques or the method that you use. So in Agile, facilitation, negotiations are very important. When you have to communicate lots of statistics in a very complex world where things are changing faster and faster, and you have to do it quickly, storytelling is also a very important skill that now becomes important because you need to be able to synthesize information and tell a story quickly. Of course, the business context, business knowledge is critically important, so that's the third quadrant. And the fourth one is what I call the technology domains. Technology is changing so fast that BAs needs to be also very attuned to this technology. So you have to think of yourself as a holistic view of skills and knowledge that makes you the BA of the future.
Go next.
I've got a question here for the panel. So, good afternoon, panel. I'm Sundar from Mashtec. Probably the third time I'm now standing up and asking a question. So, you must now probably have an idea. So, some time back, I had written an article internally for my company, which was the journey of an IT business analyst. Okay, and this panel discussion on the ecosystem, I want to ask a question related to the article that I had written. Now, I don't know about everyone out here, but I certainly believe a large section of the business analysts in an IT industry kind of organically grow from some stage of development into business analysis and so on. I mean, there is a percentage who directly join as business analysts who have completed their MBAs and join as business analysts, but there are others who kind of graduate into that role. Okay, and Mr. Dayapatra, I mean, you did focus upon one to have domain knowledge, to have in-depth knowledge of an industry, but for an IT business analyst, someone who's posted into different projects, you may not have the luxury of actually deepening your, industry knowledge to a great extent. So there is probably a horizontal growth than a vertical growth. And Mr. Sanjay, who just spoke before, where he was talking on the IoT, Internet of Things, he mentioned about a horizontal growth and the importance of it as well. So, how does the ecosystem help these kind of business analysts who are organically growing within an IT company but don't have the depth in a particular domain? Today I have to work in some project, tomorrow I'll have to work in maybe some other project, some other domain. How does the ecosystem help a business analyst in this case?
Okay, I'll jump in here. So I think there are two aspects to it. You're absolutely correct in terms of the horizontal growth that you're talking about. And I think historically, again, if you look at IT industry, a lot of the BA community has grown organically, where they were developers, they got into solving problems, they liked that space, they said, I don't want to do coding, let me do this, and there's an opportunity, they start documenting. So eventually that's the growth path. So it was more than just the choice of being a BA. I think it came along, and that's what they started liking. Right? Most of the people have gone through that. So if you look at IIBA as a standard, the reason, and by the way, I come from the same background. Okay, I was a developer, grew that way, fortunate to do my MBA, but then I kept on sustaining myself as a BA because that's what I loved doing it. And what changed my life when I did my CBAP and looked at Babcock was the context in the way you apply some of these principles. Now, before that, I was doing a good job, by the way, okay? But then there was no benchmark. But with Babcock and with some of the certifications in place, I know whether I'm doing good or if there is a room for improvement. So there is a complete clarity that is emerging for the BA community as far as horizontal growth is concerned. You can always benchmark yourself. You can always compare what's going on in the body of knowledge. Are you applying that effectively? Of course, it's not the straight application. It's not lift and shift. You probably need to tailor based on the situation you are in. But there is still a huge opportunity at that space. So that solves the horizontal aspect to me. As far as vertical is concerned, I think industry as a whole, this is a challenge. And the reason is, ultimately, we are IT service providers. We are not domain experts. So I somehow beg to differ in front of our clients, or even internally when we talk to a lot of the other stakeholders with other system integrators, that we are domain specialists. We are not. Do you think if you're, for example, talking to Walmart, do you think we are matching their domain expertise as a company? I don't think we can. However, I think the amount of involvement that we create with them in understanding their business, that's where our core horizontal skill comes into play. Can we collect that knowledge that the team has, or the whole company has for that matter, and use that to create productive, domain-centric skill set for BAs, and apply that back for the same client, or maybe for other clients. So I think domain, it's very difficult to replace SMEs. The shortest way to achieve domain excellence is just to hire some of the domain experts, but how many can you hire? And what's the motivation for them to leave their domain jobs and come to a system integrator for that matter, right? So I think the idea is, the challenge for companies like us for that matter is that we need to create that ecosystem of applying, first of all, harvesting that knowledge, and then applying it back for our engagements, and using that as an opportunity to grow our vertical skills. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
No, just to add to what Ashish said, I think the reason why BAs remain in that horizontal space and not sort of gain the industry expertise is because most of the IT services companies don't have a separate career stream or talent segment for BAs. I think some of the companies are changing. And like I talked about the three-tier model that we have developed. We need to create that separate career stream or talent segment, whatever you call, for BAs, where they can sort of remain within the same industry segment, industry vertical, to gain that industry expertise. Now, while I agree with Ashish that yes, we cannot go to Walmart and tell them how they should run their business, but today customers' expectations are changing, and they expect us as IT or SI service provider to sort of bring in that domain expertise. So if they have identified a pain area, or more, nowadays sometimes customers even come to us and say, look, you service 10 different customers in this industry segment. What is happening in the industry? How you can help me innovate in my industry? Therefore, the knowledge of the trends, knowledge of what's happening in the industry at large, I think helps. And that cannot be achieved unless you remain in the same industry segment, project after project, and gain that experience. And for that, there has to be a very, very methodical, very concerted effort within IT services companies to give a career path to BAs to build their career and eventually become industry experts.
Thank you. Let's go back, I think. Yeah, some more questions. Yep.
Hi, I'm Vinu from Cognizant. I just had one question. I think the previous question and the answer kind of largely covered what I had originally in mind. So I have slightly different question. We're talking about ecosystem here. I just have a question on if are companies really realizing the importance of a BA ecosystem internally, right? And do you think companies are doing enough? And also kind of part B to that is, do you think they're also doing enough to the community in general, outside of the companies also? If so, if IIBA were to kind of pinpoint and say, hey, these are the things you guys can do to the community, what would that be? I'm just curious to know. Thanks.
That's a fabulous question. I would love this. I think absolutely yes. And one of the clear example is, this room itself. You see the leaders sitting here. Since morning, I'm sure you're observing. There are two reasons of whatever change you see. One is the pull from the market, the demand that is coming in terms of, again, disruptions, but more importantly, reskilling and upskilling the talent pool that the corporates have. So that's one aspect of it. The second is for all these corporates to help their clients achieve some of the goals and the better business outcome for that matter. I think there's a clear focus on, they're looking for capabilities that can be used. They're looking for skill sets that can help them achieve them faster. And I think there's no other capability or skill for that matter other than business analysts and business architects. And remember, I'm using this term repeatedly for you to also notice that you have a choice and a chance to uplift your capabilities to move up from BAs to business architecture level, where you can actually get into the C-room discussion, apply same principles of Babcock, but be able to influence a much bigger change, right? So I think there's a tectonic shift again taking place, and that's the reason you see IIBA here. You see some of the products being displayed to you. You see all the large corporations being involved in this transformation effort. We are also meeting some of the analysts. You would see Forrester here tomorrow. And these are clear examples of why there is a focus coming to this. And guess what? If you notice, some of you were there 3 years back when we did the convention, and we had never done the event. We just did it for the first time. To now, I think there's a huge change in uplifting in the involvement of corporations and academia and research firms, IIBA itself. You've seen that change, right? Just in 3 years, if you have a large forum with all the IIBA leadership, with all the large leaders from all the top corporations of the world, including Forrester, and you're meeting policymakers as well, I don't think there is a better example than this in terms of the change that is taking place. So this is fundamental in my views.
And wait until the next 3 years.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. What is the time? Do we have no time check, guys? 3 o'clock, right? Okay, excellent. 5 more minutes on this topic, please.
Yeah. Just one question. I'm Venkat from UST Global. Thanks a lot for the informative session. I just wanted to touch upon one of the topics that you discussed, like the common language in the ecosystem. We often see that governments and corporations, they try to push for their own set of standards. Like for example, in the EDI, which is, the primary purpose of EDI is to have a common language of communication between businesses. But we see different standards being adopted by different countries. And we have some EDI formats just for specific countries alone. So how do we ensure that such fragmentation does not happen in requirements engineering or in BA community? How does IIBA ensure that we have a global standard, a common language, especially given that we don't have a presence in every country?
Who wants this?
So I think I understood the question. So how IIBA ensure that the common language and are shared across all organizations and with other organizations?
Yes. How do we ensure that competing standards does not come up because that would defeat the purpose, right? In having a common language. How do we ensure that IIBA can lobby for a common set of standards for the BA community?
Well, that's our commitment. So that we are lobbying for this and engage organizations to do that. One of the things that we're also doing is engaging with other professional associations in the domain of business analysis and related practices, and start sharing the languages. There are organizations, new organizations, for example, business relationship management, which is a form of enterprise analysis, if I can say. They have defined their language as well. We're going to collaborate with them. We're going to engage with them and see how we can align those standards together. So there is at that level that's taking place, at the government level that's taking place, with large organizations like Walmart and Accenture and others, we're trying to do that as well. So it's not a small answer. It takes an effort on different perspective, but I can tell you that's the commitment of our organization to do that.
And if I could just add on to that, Mr. Passionate Michael spoke earlier this morning about that common language, and that IIBA is the leader in the space of business analysis. And through the BABOK, we will develop that common language. We will set the standard, the gold standard, and bring these other associations on board with us to set that global standard.
Thank you.
So the last question, please. Just hitting the time. One last question.
Yep, I have one. Hi, my name is Vandana.
Vandana, can you hold the mic? Yep.
Is it better?
Yep.
Okay. While we spoke about the domain skills, which is very important for the business analyst, along with other skill set, My question is for the leadership team here, that while we are looking at collaboration with various technology partners, product partners, and the analyst forum, do we see any scope where we could also look at collaborating with domain experts in the industry, someone who sets standards which potentially would help all the analysts across the world build their skill set? And also, not this one, if in future, if we see another dimension added to the Babok guide to help us grow in that prospect?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
ALAIN just touched upon that point.
I'm not sure if I understood correctly.
So her question is, because domain is important, are we partnering with other domain bodies?
Yes.
To build standards? And I think you just answered that
yes,
prior to this. That's exactly what's going on.
We're just starting that process. Stephen mentioned that we have actually signed some collaborations which we're not ready yet to communicate. They'll come in very soon, though. But yes, absolutely, and that's part of my job is to look at other organizations, domain-related organizations, so that process takes place.
So I just wanted to add. So those efforts are already on the way. You would hear some of those announcements pretty soon, right? So they'll at least put the domain, whether domain is required or core BAs. I think that question would be put to rest, because there'll be a lot of these combinations that will emerge in future. And also, in my views, I think you brought up the point of perspectives. I think how we would address some of these. Even Babok 3, if you notice, there are 5 perspectives that are added. So perspective is a new concept, which is about how you apply Babok in certain specific areas. For example, Agile, or business intelligence, or business process management. So there are 5 of them which are already released in version 1. And we've discussed that. And in future, we are also looking at the industry trends and would be coming up with more perspectives to complement that effort. So it's not just the domain aspect of maturity that we are focused on. It's also we are on the other horizontal areas where Babok is applied. We're looking at that as well.
Thank you.
Can we have a mic here, please?
That are working in the financial services industry would be aware where beyond the banking industry, an architecture network is coming out with generic standards and services and processes that is applicable across the world. That's headquartered in the United States. And it would make a lot of sense for institute like, our institute, IIBA, to collaborate with them, because they have started only for financial services industry, which they are going to extend to other industry as well. One of the dreams Ashish and I always discuss is, how do we extend the BA profession to other industries than IT? So this is the right time. Absolutely. If we could collaborate with beyond services. We are doing a lot of work with them. Yeah. If you could collaborate with them, I think this is an excellent opportunity for deepening the domain knowledge as a part of our perspective in the Babok Next.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we had the same conversation at dinner time last night about this. There's definitely some areas in financials and pharma and insurance, maybe retailer, that we would explore, extending some of those standards and even certification to help more domain-specific BAs, business analysis.
Yes, it is there. Yep. So pharma, just referring to the pharma domain.
Yep, that's right.
And we already have an interest.
We have that's right. Yep.
All right. So I hate to say this, but I think it's time for us to close. Thank you, everyone here. This has been fabulous. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Dayapatra. Thank you, IIBA, for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this.